Well, if you're in the market to buy a home, you probably know it can be a stressful process, and that can lead to mistakes along the way.
Here to talk about the top 5 buyer mistakes is Mike Sposato with Carolina Realty Advisors. Mike, good morning. It's nice to see you.
Good morning. Nice seeing you guys.
Good to see you.
You're trying to save buyers some grief here. That's why you're going over the top 5 mistakes that we can make. The first one, you say, is getting overly emotional or worked up during the process. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, you know, let's face it, buying a home is an emotional ordeal for a lot of people. It's the biggest investment most people will make financially, and so they just get worked up sometimes about things that you don't need to get worked up about, and that's part of the reason you want to have a good realtor to kind of intermediate and be there to help kind of calm that down. But some examples would be, maybe you start the process out and the first home you look at that you really want to buy, somebody beat you to the punch. That happens, and then some of my clients, when that happens, they go away for a little bit. They need to kind of recover and get over it a little bit.
Well, because buyers, we think like, oh, that was my home,
Right.
and that was my last shot, and you're kind of there to remind them there's lots of houses, there are lots of choices.
Happens all the time.
Yeah.
And then once we get into the process, there's a lot of money involved. So, you know, making offers on the property, you know, people get really nervous about that, and so we're there to kind of ease the negotiation process. And even when we're under contract, things happen during inspections, appraisals, the rest of the process that people just are on pins and needles, and they can get really emotional about it.
You know, and here's another big thing is, don't go in alone because you don't understand the market conditions, but you do because that's your job.
Yeah, I would say that's probably one of the top things there as well, because right now is a perfect example. We're in what's called a seller's market. There's kind of a pendulum that swings with regards to how much time a property is on the market on average. And if it's 6 months is kind of the equilibrium, where that means there's enough buyers and sellers in the market that from the time someone lists their home until they close, it's about 6 months. Anything higher than 6 months means there's plenty of inventory. It's more of a buyer's market. But right now, we're down to 3.8 months, which I've been doing this 14 years, and this is the least amount of inventory I've ever seen. But yet I still have buyers that call me up and think they're going to, buy homes for, 80% of the, the value. And I'm like, it's not going to happen, not today.
Right. Another mistake that you say buyers can make is not understanding the length of time it takes to buy a home. What do you mean by that, Mike?
Well, all of us at one point in our life leased a property, I'm sure, right? And when you go to, lease a property, you could show up and look at the property and make application, and if you wanted to move in at the end of the week or maybe at the end of the month, that's kind of how leasing works. And a lot of people think that that's how it works when you go to buy a property, but it's quite the opposite. The average time to actually start the process, go through the whole entire thing with the financing, finding the right home, going through the process of, the underwriting a loan and everything is closer to 6 months. So if you're thinking you want to buy a property in the spring, you need to get started today.
Wow, and you already mentioned the finances, but most people don't know. You better be pre-approved, or you're not going anywhere in this process.
That's true. With financing, it's kind of a funny thing. Some people don't like to look and see how good or bad their credit might be, so they're kind of like they don't want to
start. Yeah.
But it's great to start early, because in the event there's some unknown blemish that you have, it's better to deal with it up front and get that taken care of earlier in the process versus finding the home you want and then starting the process only to find out you can't get that loan. Then you're, embarrassed, you're upset, and you might be in a bad spot where you're going to, rest your head at night, because if you can't get that house, where are you going to go?
So get that pre-approval ahead of time. And the last mistake that you want to talk about is when buyers don't understand the value of working with a good realtor. Explain why that is so important.
Well, the first thing, let's knock the whole money part out of the way, because there's a lot of people that think if they go and they hire a realtor that it's going to cost them extra money. And I understand that. I mean, when I bought my first property, I thought the same thing too until I got my license. However, if you work with me, if I'm your buyer agent, I don't charge any fees whatsoever. So that aside, my job is to basically, I wear 3 different hats during the whole process of buying the property. One is, I call it your home shopping hat. It's the fun part where we get to drive around and help you find a suitable property that meets your criteria. once we find that property, I put on somewhat of a quasi-attorney hat because I have to help you with the negotiations, promote your best interest. I have to be loyal to you. There's also a confidentiality clause, so I have to make sure I maintain complete confidentiality of everything that we talk about. And then lastly, as we get going towards the closing, there's some other fiduciary responsibilities I have to make sure that we close the deal properly. So having a great agent is number one top priority when you're trying to buy property.
I would never try to go it alone.
No.
That's for sure. If you're thinking about buying or selling a home, call Mike at Carolina Realty Advisors. The number, it's there on your screen, 704-619-7070. I'll say it again, the number 704-619-7070, or visit them online, charlottepropertiesforsale.com. charlottepropertiesforsale.com. Mike Sposato, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Indeed.
Appreciate it.